Hello everyone, welcome to this video. Today we're going to be going through the events of the Monday leading up to the crucifixion of Jesus. We're going to go through the events that Jesus done and what he partook in and what really happened on this day. We know that Good Friday is when Jesus is crucified, but this series is going to go through the events step by step of what actually happened during this week and why it's so important for not only the believer to know but the unbeliever to know. So today being Monday, we're going to go through what happened on Monday. So on this day there are three major events that happened, three events where we could look in the Bible and see clearly what happened. The first one is the cursing of the fig tree, and the cursing of the fig tree is representing God's judgment on Israel, because salvation was first offered to the Jews, to the nation of Israel as a whole, and we all know that they rejected it. They didn't want it. The Pharisees knew all the scriptures, they had all this head knowledge, but they didn't accept the fact that the Messiah, that Jesus, didn't come the way they wanted to. And in fact, they equated the works of Jesus, the works of the Holy Spirit, to that of demons, which then Jesus replied with, if a house is divided, it'll not stand. And we know that Jesus was able to do all things because he had authority, because he is God in flesh. So that's what the cursing of the fig tree represents. It represents God's judgment on Israel. And we can see this in Mark chapter 11, verse 12. And it reads as following. On the following day, when they came from Bethany, he was hungry, and seeing in the distance a fig tree in leaf, he went to see if he could find anything on it. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for it was not the season for figs. And he said to it, may no one ever eat fruit from you again. And his disciples heard it. So the second event is the cleaving of the temple. Jesus went into the temple of Jerusalem, and he's seen all these money changers selling pigeons for the Jewish people to sacrifice at the temple for the forgiveness of their sins. But they weren't just selling them at the price that they would normally be. They were overcharging so they could make a bigger profit. And this is what we would call a daylight robbery, because it was. And Jesus saw this, and he was righteously angry at it. And we can read about this event in Matthew chapter 21, verse 12 to 30, Mark chapter 11, verse 15 to 17, and Luke chapter 19, verse 45 to 46. And what I'm going to read from is Mark chapter 11, 15 to 17. And this is as follows. And they came to Jerusalem, and he entered the temple and began to drive out those who sold and those who bought in the temple. And he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. And he would not allow anyone to carry anything through the temple. And he was teaching them and saying to them, is it not written, my house shall be called a house of prayer for all the nations, but you have made it a den of robbers. And this event angered the Pharisees, it angered the scribes. And we can see in the next verse is that the chief priests and the scribes heard it, and they were seeking a way to destroy Jesus. But they didn't do it there and then because they feared him. Jesus' popularity had grown, and they feared that the people would turn against them if they turned on Jesus. And finally, Jesus and the 12 disciples returned back to Bethany. We see this in Mark chapter 11, verse 19. And when evening came, they went out of the city. So today, in summary, we know that the fig tree was cursed. We know the meaning behind it. We know that Jesus went into the temple of Jerusalem, and the daylight robbery that was going on there, the wickedness, the overcharging, the overpricing, it upset Jesus, it angered Jesus, and righteously so, as we would if we went into a market and we know the price of a strawberry was £1 all the way across the world, but people were charging £2. We would be upset because we know that that is not the cost of that item. It's daylight robbery. And Jesus cleared the temple, and he said, is it not written that my house be called a house of prayer for all the nations? But you have made it a den of robbers. Famously, it's a den of thieves, but it just depends on your translation. And finally, we see that Jesus and the 12 disciples went back to Bethany, as they did yesterday on Palm Sunday. After the triumphal entry into Jerusalem and spending some time there, they went back to Bethany. And we see they've done the same today. And that is the end of today's video, learning about what happened on the Monday leading up to the crucifixion of Jesus. If you really like this content, please subscribe, like, and share it. There's so many Christian videos that are being suppressed because we have an algorithm against it. And I know I may probably be saying that isn't going to help, but with God, all things are possible. And I don't do these videos to benefit me. I don't do this to push me, but to help people, but to point people to Jesus, to help people know about Jesus and what he done and the good news about him. And if you're supportive of this content, I would just say just send it to someone who you know who hasn't encountered Jesus, or someone who you do know that needs to be reminded of the goodness of Jesus. If you really do enjoy this video, please like, share, subscribe. God bless.